Okay, we have a great opportunity to open. In fact, the quite important because 30. But I'm not really big fan of those equal numbers. But we start the 30th Audio Art Festival by your lecture. So
Thank you.
this is great. This is a great opportunity to introduce you.
Yeah.
Gert-Jan or Gerrit Johannes
Prins.
Prins
Yeah, Prins.
without E on the end.
Yes, well, basically, but I like it.
Yeah.
I like it when you...
There's an unconscious mistake, you know, like this
Prince.
appeared in very natural way. But he's from Amsterdam,
Yes.
because perhaps this is quite easy when we have the presentation. But in the concert, I also keep not nationality but the place the artist is from. This is in many cases quite interesting because in most cases we are traveling. Some of the artists are not really living in a place where they were born, and so on and so on.
Yeah, sometimes
So
this is connected to scenes, so the cities, they
Yes.
have their own scene of
Yeah.
musicians, sometimes it's connected to universities,
Oh,
of
I
course.
remember I asked Zbigniew Krakowski about this and said, the city? I'm on move, continuous move.
Yeah.
I don't know what is my main city. So that was quite nice, like a nomadic, you know. Nomadic
Yeah, that's a long story indeed, yeah.
Yeah, so to stop talking, myself. Okay, thank you very much to be with us. We are not finishing yet, but we are opening the first from 11. There will be 11 presentations which create the audio art conference.
Okay.
Sesja Audio Art startujemy w tej chwili. One są synchronizowane w dużej mierze z zajęciami, także to jest taki mój pomysł, który ja utrzymuję. Nawet mi się udało jeden wykład przesunąć z czwartku na środę na moje zajęcia z udziałem instrumentalnym w przyszłym tygodniu, we środę o 15 godzinie. Ale otwieramy i to jest akurat dość ciekawe, bo nie wiem, czy Państwo zwrócili uwagę, jaki jest tytuł tego wykładu. So perhaps you will explain about the title of your lecture and also the title of the concert. So this is quite also something. Okay. So we are opening. Gert-Jan Prins, short Prins, from Amsterdam. Your turn.
Thank you. Well, I will show some works which I was working on in the last 30 years, 40 years. I come originally from playing percussion, but drums and in many ways. And I also have a electric background. So at some point I started to combine these two elements. And the first thing, well, it's always difficult to start with explaining, but I got at some point, I will show you. I got at some point fascinated with FM radio transmitters. Mm-hmm. So that's a transmitter for, hello.
Hello.
I just started.
Okay, sorry.
I'm Gert-Jan Prins. I'm from Amsterdam, and
He's Krzysztof Koszczela from Kraków.
okay. Hello.
Composer.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I have some background in playing percussion but also with electronics, and I started to combine these two elements. So, all right. Well, what we see here was one of my first fascinations was with this kind of radio electronics. What you see here is a kind of an FM radio transmitter, and this one is a type from the 70s, which you could buy in the shop and you could solder it yourself. And I was very fascinated with this.
Made in Denmark.
It was made in Denmark. And what we see here, actually we are witnessing this kind of so-called printed circuit board. This is a PCB, so that there is copper stuff, and there are components, and even these components, they are
Będziemy
Well,
notować też na jednych zajęciach, tak żebyście wiedzieli, że też wchodzimy w takie klimaty w pewnym momencie.
and now the thing was with this machine, it was transmitting an FM radio signal, putting it in the air. I will just shortly demonstrate how that actually sounds, because we have this clean FM radio signal here, and we put this. This is also a transmitter. It's basically the same as that one, but it's built myself. Does it work? It does not work. Wait a second. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Well, that somehow. Ready for this? I have to. Let me check a second. Anyway. This is what happens. When you put this thing in the air, you get something like this. So,
Perfect.
perfect.
For example, you know, I showed them in one last lecture about silence. We were talking about silence, and we were also listening to imaginary landscape by Cage. So also the concept of radio set used as an instrument was also the part.
Sorry for this.
Oh.
God. I have to.
Jakieś inne planety chyba. Bo my tutaj tylko szum.
So what we get here is like we put a signal, just an FM radio signal. FM radio, that's the thing that you have normally on a radio, clock radios, radio in your house.
Still working.
Why am I showing this? Because I was as a kid very fascinated by this kind of electronics, and
Sorry that I'm talking with my students, but sometimes you know I like this story. But did you check the band of
Yeah.
FM here, because they are also different.
well, basically we have the receiving system here, and we have the transmitter we have here. So this was actually in the 70s my first encounter as a guy, a person of like 14, 15 years old, and I was very fascinated because I could have this thing in my hand and I could hear it on a radio which was a couple of meters further. And that I found, that was basically where it all started, strangely enough, because I thought, how I can take something and I can hear it over there. So this was this fascination with electromagnetic waves, because this thing produces electromagnetic waves. Electromagnetic waves is something else than waves in the air, of course, right? Well, I think you are, of course, all familiar with the fact that we have also there's a difference, of course, between, I mean, you are students on conservatory, you are aware of the fact that sounds coming from here is so-called longitudinal waves, wave that moves the air, which is actually something else than electromagnetic waves, which comes from here. Because then, with these electromagnetic waves, we have to receive them, we have to detect them, actually, and we have to transpose them or convert them into an audible signal, an audible signal, and first we get an audio signal which is actually pushed into the electronics, and then it's transferred to the speaker system. In that period when we were doing this, when I was doing this, we had also other persons, other people in the block, like neighboring boys, which were also doing this, so we could speak with each other in the air. And I was actually also, I find it very special to hear sounds from their rooms into my room. And that, so that actually, I was thinking, you put a room into the air and you can transmit the whole room into the air to another room. I find that fascinating, I must say. And so basically we have this kind of transmitter, transmitter receiver system, and we can also, I have also one here, like this. It's basically the same system, and it's built into one box, and I will hope it will work right now. That's what happens now. I'm taking this kind of audio, what comes out of this machine, I put it through the mixing board and I set it back to the input of the machine. So the whole thing starts to feedback. And well, of course this kind of feedback is a very basic principle for like electronic music. I think each, also for amplifiers and a lot of electronic machines, they use like feedback. Just also to help to amplify. A lot of amplifiers we use, the hi-fi systems we have in the house, they use like in some way complicated to explain precisely, but they use this kind of feedback. They take a little bit of signal which is amplified, they put it actually back into the input of the circuit, and the whole thing starts to be amplified even more. Sometimes I explain, sometimes I teach also in Art Academy, and sometimes I explain this principle by, if you are in your bathroom and you have this window, you have this mirror in your bathroom, and you have also a small cupboard with a mirror, and sometimes you have these two mirrors next to each other, and you suddenly look into 20 mirrors. I think you know this principle of, well, that's actually also a kind of feedback, which is a bit of a metaphor for what I'm trying to say. Well, it's of course when we have this, I hope I can also explain this. Let me see. Even kijken hoor. Yeah, well, you can. We are hearing one machine. This one, and we are combining these two machines, and by means of this mixing board, and we can actually. We can also make all kinds of other feedbacks by means of this mixing board. And we see that we have that we get basically by a couple of I would not say simple, not simple circuits, but a couple of circuits that we already have lots of possibilities. That's yeah, I find that. So there is a kind of, you take relatively simple circuits and you start to combine them, and you get already a lot of things, as you can hear right now. There's a lot of stuff already happening. As you can see, this is a very personal approach. There are of course lots of approaches. We can also we can buy stuff in the shop. We can transform it to our own personal needs as well. We could, of course, when we buy like something like this is basically also something like what we could basically put into the domain of so-called synthesizers. Because the same principles are actually are also possible to do this kind of stuff with synthesizers, but not for my personal feeling, not this kind of exactly this kind of sounds. Also the pathway from which you come from one specific sound to another sound is also different, and that's what we would see with each machine we would take. When I was in high school, like in the 70s, a lot of new synthesizers were actually released. They were actually very expensive. So we're talking about, for instance, like the ARP synthesizer or the Roland DX7. I think it also came in that period. And I was in high school, and we were thinking like that each new synthesizer would immediately overtake all the possibilities of the older type. So the feeling was the older type is directly, it's no longer of use. It's well, how do you call it? It's no longer necessary. So each generation, and then even after, when newer types came out, that people were thinking, well, we don't need the other one anymore. This new type will do anything the other one would can do. But in the end, in the very end, people, I think in the 90s, people started to realize that this was of course not the case, because they thought, oh, this synthesizer is having a specific sound. It's doing something not really from itself, but it has a particular characteristical sound, characteristical timbre. Actually, something which you could compare to when you play like a more like an instrument, like a conventional, not I would not say conventional, but more like a playable musical instrument like a violin or a cello. You have, of course, also a very specific characteristics of who built the instrument, and that's at some point also with these what these mass-produced electronics. They have also certain characteristics. Even the laptops, they have. I remember at some point people were starting to use laptops as an instrument, as an instrument to play live on the stage, and that was actually starting halfway 90s more or less. So it was possible to play your computer, take it with you, play stuff on the stage. But even that I think there was even a difference between the audio outputs of the different generations of laptops. If you have the G3, had probably different sound than what we have here. So in the end, with each electronic machine, we are also dealing with the idea from the output. How the output is still a kind of screen, a kind of kader. How you call it? There is something about all the signal you do, it still has to go through this couple of elements in the end, which is actually like a bit like a door. You have lots of different types of doors, and well, of course there is also stuff cannot be perfect, because you have also, if you want to have right like the best output for indeed this kind of machines, then you would change a little bit of end of electronic, but you would not. It would not be maybe very useful in relation to the fact that what you would play on the machine, because probably the message on the machine is probably more important what you play here than the sound you get from the output. But it's just as an example. because otherwise we get into the hi-fi freaks thing where people thinking about hi-fi and they want to change each element of their amplifier, which you can do also in a kind of perfectionistic way, which is sometimes too much at some point. So these are basically very simple chains of feedback, and yeah, just to say that with relatively simple circuits we can, and the mixing boards, we can have a lot of different stuff happening. This is also quite something. Yeah, well, I showed you. I will, of course, I just want to show you very shortly what I found today. That was, oh, of course, is there a network here?
Yes, there is, but you need the password as a student.
Oh, that's complicated. Oh, let's not do it. Okay. All right. Well, this is basically how this kind of machines could look. I will continue. Yeah, I started to work from out this electronic research also into sometimes into visual stuff, towards the visual, but not particularly this thing, but I just wanted to show this kind of thing as a kind of metaphor for that this kind of stuff is. I found it in Holland, in my home country. It's hard to imagine, but these things are of course also like a kind of generators, a kind of transmitters. So we have when we have, for instance, this thing which making pulses, or we could also compare it to this one is like pumping like electromagnetic waves, and we have here like a system for very analog system for pushing water, and this was designed in Holland for a laboratory for doing experiments with water to actually create a new dike. How do you say that? These dams which we need in Holland to keep the water out, and there needed to be constructed a very big one in the 50s and the 60s. It was called the Delta Works, and so there was one kind of so-called water laboratory which was actually trying to simulate the simulations of this water. But what my idea was that I also saw motors and oscillators in my imagination, and I thought, oh, this is also pushing, like I could imagine this thing moving, and all right, yeah, this is also a visual with this kind of system. Sometimes I even combine it with what you see here. Sorry. Yeah, sometimes there are some relics from the drums. This kind of snare drum. This is a very stuff I used in the past to try to start actually with this combination of transmitters and feedback, because what I found out, when you take this small transmitter and you put it on the radio, on this kind of old clock radio, then this thing starts also to make feedback sounds. Yeah. Well, this thing is just a power supply, just to make 12 volts, so it's kind of an adapter, transformer adapter. what you see here is very old school. You see here the radio tube. I used that for a period, but I thought I cannot find any reason how to use it now, because I think this combination is working actually a bit better. So this is the thing, is that with this kind of setups, that it's always changing a bit over time. So a couple of months later, maybe you change something, or half a year later sometimes, or a year later. Although the stuff you see here, this one I'm using still after. This is a picture from 15 years ago. Some parts of this setup I still use.
Does it disturb this beautiful
No,
city noise?
I like a little. It's good to have a bit of outside.
Coming together with the fresh air.
Very good.
The Krakow, which is less polluted than the other cities. Compared with Beijing, for example.
I just changed a second from the sound system to something else. This was
Do you need this chair? Or
no. That's good.
Maybe we'll even check this camera. Bo zamkniemy drzwi, żeby już nikt się nie mógł spóźnić, nie?
This is working. Okay, I'm happy. Spell off. Yeah, some 10 years ago I got. It's hard to see right now. Well,
I thought that it's our studio, but it's not.
it's something like this. Exactly. Yeah, you're right, Marek. This is a neutral room.
Oh.
A neutral room. What is a neutral room? Well, it's just a room with not so much in it. At some point it was grey, and I was thinking. Actually there was. They asked for the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam. They asked for artists to make or to make an ID for a sound installation. So a lot of people applied, and I thought, well, I'm not. At that point, I was not a very big fan of sound art, because I thought, oh my God, sound art, that's something that you see speakers and stuff and a lot of things and I don't know. So I thought what happens when you hide all the speakers? Just you hide the speakers and you just hear the sound. And actually they liked that idea. So I put the speakers behind this curtain, so the screen in this room. Actually this room is as huge as this room. And you don't see anything, you just walk, but you hear sound. And these museums are also, of course, producing, and they write about these things, and they were writing that the sound was taking in this neutral room was actually taking a kind of sculptural form itself, because in this neutral room you had this kind of only the sound, and it was as if there was some kind of invisible sculpture happening at some point. What did I do? I put on this.
Can I interrupt? Because I'm not quite clear. Is it neutral room have any connection with anechoic chamber, or this is just like a room which has no specific.
No, it didn't have any specific.
You go
No.
to relax, or what is the? Czy może ktoś wie, co to jest neutral room? Bo ja się zatrzymałem i brakuje mi tej wiedzy, dlatego go pytam.
There was no real idea of anechoic room.
A neutral, yeah, neutral.
No, but that was acoustically relatively neutral, but not too much, and so not anechoic. And I also thought the initial plan was also to put speakers in the under the floor, but that idea they could not do in the museum, so we stuck actually to the thing. And what I did, I just put like sound from
że nie wiem właśnie co to jest.
from it sounded more like I put on a CD from in a loop, which was actually always playing for like repetitive for 3/4 of an hour. An album I released in 2008. So people could walk in to this space and they could listen to the sound, which was actually on a moderate level, not too loud. Just like this. And this kind of. This comes from the timpani, the big drum, and I took a microphone on the timpani and it's put through this machine, so you get a kind of feedback. Yeah. This kind of stuff. Okay.
Ale wie pan co, kiedyś był wykład właśnie Wilsona Sukowskiego, wiecie ile tu było osób wtedy? 35 studentów. Więc to jakby wyjaśnia, że aż 4 mówiło po portugalsku, bo ich tak dużo, że w końcu ktoś mógł mówić po portugalsku.
To możemy zamykać teraz.
Okay, but I have a question.
Oj, będziesz żałował. Ja się tu nawet nie wiecie, kogo się spodziewam.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm sorry. I have a question because I'm not sure. I don't understand.
Tak dużo, że poproszę pana o
Because I know you have transmitter and you have receiver, but how you change the audio signal to magnetic field?
By the transmitter.
But the transmitter, but you plug the microphone. For example, like you have you want to feedback from timpani, and you put microphone, but microphone goes where? To
Just
mixer?
input of the transmitter.
Input on the transmitter. So
Jest tak obciążona.
change to the
Yeah,
electric value.
you're right,
and
yeah.
Like
Yeah, you could also put it on the input of a mixing board. It depends on what you want to do. Yeah.
so
And you can also combine, of course, several of these transmitters. So you take one to put the microphone through, and you feedback it to the mixing board another one, and then even with this system, a possibility to implement an extra microphone. Which I will show later.
all right.
Wydrapię tam datę.
Thank you.
This is also gear I work with. This is a kind of. At some point, I thought to put cymbals on the floor to play them with my feet as well. Not
Jeżeli
for
się
now.
widzicie, to zaznaczcie się, że jesteście tylko tą 16, dobra? Spróbujcie jakoś ładnie to zrobić, prawda, żeby było jakoś tak ładnie, estetycznie.
Łatwiej się będzie.
I ten długopis jest pożyczony, więc... Ale to ciekawe, kurczę. Próbuję rozpinić. Takie, wiecie, w biurowcu jest jedno pomieszczenie, które nie ma funkcji, nie? Czyli no, wszystkie są wizytówki, a jedno jest puste. Właśnie, czy ono może być tym I'm trying to figure out the concept of neutral room. Of neutral room. Yeah, whether it exists in your case, but I'm just trying to find some places whether they have something like that, you know.
Yeah.
You have a lobby, which is not really neutral. You have a foyer, something where you are passing, and but then there are places which are waiting for to get the function. Okay.
Actually, I was yesterday on the airport,
Uh-huh.
and I saw a beautiful space on the airport. But maybe I will show it. It's not on my computer yet, but it was so beautiful. It was somewhere within a lost and found situation, that you could pick up your lost and found luggage.
Uh-huh.
But next to it there was a room which was probably not used. Maybe it was in former days for waiting or for corona checks. I don't know, but it was looking beautiful.
Uh-huh.
It was actually asking for stuff to be put in the room and as a kind of temporary
Uh-huh.
exhibition from something or a sound work.
It means that they are temporary sometimes. Yes, they are just in between. Perhaps.
Well, that thing on the airport
they
was
keep
not.
some background maybe, but they
I
lost
don't know
it
what this
and
thing in the airport was. It was just in the transit area, so it could be used for anything at some point. So
finally, you are getting hotel, and you are telling me that it's beautiful. Okay, so this is
the hotel is also beautiful, of course. Yeah, that's right. This was the installation I had. This was one of the first installations I made in 1996. I was just working on trying. It's a bit of a former system of this one, and experiments with this kind of machines. And after that, I could make it into very small ones. Okay. All right.
z neutralnego pokoju.
Yeah, sometimes I also got inspired by all these sculptural aspects of this kind of machines, and the fact that the components are hanging. So I made this small drum kit from transistors, basically. I even put it into an orchestra.
Okay.
It's in a gallery in Rotterdam.
Multiplying is the
Yeah, it's 24 pieces of. I will first show this one. This is a radio from Germany, of course. It looks very solid. It's like it was made for measuring purposes. In the end of the 50s, end of the beginning of the 60s, end of the 50s. It was a high measuring, high gear, high res equipment. But what I liked was actually the inside of it. It looks very sculptural. It looks like a small city, and you had also components in it like this. I found that very fascinating because it actually. What we see here is that we have rooms inside the electronics, a couple of rooms, halls, and the thing is that it's. Of course, you could find also when you take other stuff apart, you can find, of course, beautiful things. But what I also liked from this idea was that the fact that it was developed for the highest standard of functionality. So there was no idea with this thing to make it look beautiful at all. No, that was not the case. It was just it had to work in the best possible way. So it was a very high piece of engineering. There was no idea of aesthetics with this. It was just about making something from copper and silver on top, and isolate situations from electronics. So make the electronics work well. So, coming out of this idea of these rooms, I thought, what would be the case when we could go into this kind of rooms? If we would manage to be a very small person and we could grab or walk through this stuff, and also with the idea that, of course, we use so much technology these days. I mean, if we have the iPhone, we are actually carrying a radio transmitter with us. We have a receiver. We have this kind of, actually not exactly this kind, but we carry it with us. We are continuously communicating with electronics. Now this is the next step, is actually that you enter the electronics. So I have made this big one thing where you can walk in. So you could actually walk in this kind of installation and you hear these sounds. I had to make, after when I will do this next time, I will make it more interactive. It was actually a lot of work. So huge installation, like 8 meters and 2.5 meters, 2 meters high.
It was made by metal.
It was made by this kind of where they make the printed circuit boards from, this copper, this copper clad laminate they call it. So it's a kind of polyester with very thin layer of copper. Yeah. Yeah, and also made this kind of installation, which is which came actually out of the former one. This is a kind of metal textile tent.
Perfect.
It's a kind of a cage of Faraday, so to say. So here in this kind of thing, you cannot receive radio signals anymore. So I was actually interested in making also something like what would mean like a kind of a zero in my installations, so that you could not get it anymore. So in this tent you can only hear. If you would take a radio, you could also only hear like. There's no signal coming into this thing anymore. This stuff is actually it's sometimes used by people who does not want to be spied. So if you are working with your computer inside, nobody can actually grab your information. Yeah, here's another piece of work which actually also inspired of making. I had to do an exhibition and I had to make 5 from a piece for people to buy in a so-called multiple, and I made 5 of these ones, which is actually also a very small radio receiver, which looks a bit like a pistol. And this is this kind of, well, you saw the inspiration for this kind of things, this kind of machinery I showed you, and a very small transmitter. And when you put this thing on top of this one, it starts to feedback. You hear, or this is, it doesn't have a microphone, but the fact that it's that there are these elements, they also they transmit also the mechanical vibrations of especially this coil. It's mechanically sensitive, so that's because that's called microphonic. Yeah, I made several of these installations. So actually, it's about magnifying this kind of electronics into a bigger kind of a space, which you could also can enter. So you start to feel it in a certain way. Yeah, this is also another one from this big copper thing I showed. I made also a smaller one in another setting. And actually, this house, it also contained this installation which you saw in the beginning, the one with the curtain, this neutral space, and there was sound inside, so you could enter this box and you could hear the sound. behind there were no visible speakers. Yeah. Yeah, this is another instrument I don't use at the moment, but this is basically, yeah. How can I explain? It's more like a piece of digital gear. It's a combination of 4 square wave generators. A square wave generator is an electronic piece of gear which creates. You can also do it with a synthesizer. It creates so-called square waves. And here we see 4 square wave generators, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they are actually they're actually sending pulses to a chip which has an address input. So here we get into the computer domain, but it's basically a bit of like an analog computer, which switches signals, which you can put in signal and you can switch it.
Like logic gate.
Sorry?
It's like logic gate. Logic gate no matter. It's like processor, you put in the signals and it's combined and transmit the signal like analog signal.
Yeah, it's an analog switch basically, but you can control it digitally.
Is it common for the direct digital synthesis? As you remember, the very early beginning of Max Matthews experiments, they were using also this direct digital synthesis, just based on the
it's basically you make like
logic gate.
it's just you make ones and zeros by a square wave, and you give it to a chip with an address input, and this chip it can decide on the combinations of the ones and the zeros. It decides which signal is switched. It's just a very simple system, but it worked pretty effectively. But now I don't use it for now. It's like a.
Znaczy od razu mówię, że będziemy budować elektronikę na bazie tych właśnie zasad, czyli z chipu, który jest tylko jakimś gate'em, który się otwiera, zamykać, będziemy uzyskiwać dźwięki. Będziemy budować mini teremin właśnie na bazie tej zupełnie podstawowej elektroniki. A to się nazywa hardware hacking, circuit bending i tak dalej, te właśnie techniki. Także we are talking about circuit bending in a way.
Yeah, circuit bending. Yes. Thank you, Marek. It's indeed what I was saying. We can buy stuff in the shop. Yeah. We can try to make a more personal instrument from it if we wish. That means that we sometimes can take stuff out and we make other connections within this. We would open this, we take a wire, we
of course not with this because it belongs to the Academy of Music, but in general you are going to the flea market, you are buying an old Casio, you are opening and then it's smoke, one fire, and it doesn't work at all.
No, you just take
if you know about it, and you know
it's very simple. You can just take a very simple wire, and you take one capacitor, one component, because the capacitor, it will block all the battery tension, so and it will only give the signals, or the AC signal, the signal we need for the signal, so to say, and and then you can mostly freely experiment. Yeah, this was an installation. It was just this kind of.
Płytek, na tym się buduje układy scalone, więc ta miedź i ten kolor jest podniesiony do poziomu właśnie tej scenografii, instalacji.
I made this. I was making it. The room was there, and I had these kind of ideas. And then, of course, you improvise sometimes with the material, because sometimes we cannot foresee everything. Because sometimes we take stuff, and we do stuff in the room itself, more or less. You can compare it to going to a party and maybe taking some wine and some food, instead of that people tell you have to do this or this or that. No, it's this. That's something to compare. after I made it, this gear, I thought, whoa, there was a kind of quite some. I started to analyze it a bit, but anyway, we have here this kind of percussive stuff happening. This whole thing is making feedback already, and basically there are speakers here, small speakers, big speakers, the public who walks in this exhibition space. They can also touch these things and they can change the sound. Yeah, this is more like a visual thing. I was thinking, what does it? Where does this thing relate to? I was thinking for myself, and I have of course a lot of inspiration also from antennas. At some point, I thought this is also about huge antenna-like stuff, and then I printed these things with the insides of this machine. I showed you this. You saw this machine, and there was a lot of other stuff which was used in this kind of machine, and I took that out and I printed that on this copper. So you see here actually prints of the machine on the copper itself. Yeah, if this is quite hard to see, but at some point and I was also in this installation. There you had something. When I was walking in after, and I thought, there is also something about language about this thing. If you want to speak this kind of stuff when you walk there, you have the idea suddenly that you would like to make sounds out of that kind of visual harsh way of directly printing stuff on another material.
This wall is like a one piece of copper? It's like a
No, it's
smaller wall.
yeah, it's a good question. Actually, it's on 20 pieces, I think, of this size. Like.
And how did you manage to combine them, all of them?
Yeah, I of course I printed a lot of them, and I just.
Are they connected or not?
They are connected with small screws and with some soldering. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you create that kind of?
That was quite something. That was also the thing when we were. I was thinking, should I put them straight to the wall, like very formally, like that thing over there, or should I put them like in a kind of this kind of situation? And this, for me, this felt at that point it related more for me also to this idea of antenna-like situations, and which I like a lot. I took also these kind of objects from this machine, this German machine you saw, and I exposed them as well. For instance, also this thing, which looks like a small bunker, and that small bunker was actually also comes back also in this kind of forms. Good. Yeah, this is more or less the thing from. If you look very closely to this kind of.
If I may ask, how you generate that kind of pattern?
It was just putting metals from this electronic machine. I took salt, just natural salt, and I think I put them on it for like 2 weeks, something like that. Afterwards, I found technique to do it much faster with electricity. It goes much faster when you involve electricity in this process. It goes much faster. But it's interesting to build this kind of stuff slowly from one thing to another, and it's corrosion, so to say. this is a very early work with the TV. Why a TV? I found out that this, I cannot show it right now, but this transmitters, they have also, they generate like 100 megahertz of FM radio signal, but they, like normal musical instruments, they also create overtones. So there is a, if you have 100 megahertz, there is also a strong signal on 300 megahertz, there's a strong signal on 500 megahertz, and these signal you could receive by old school television, the UHF. So with this kind of TV, sometimes these have a knob, and you could see what this electromagnetic signal was doing on the television. So this is like a, I think this was in France, and in the neighborhood of this building there was a kind of strange transmitter from a company, and you could see it on the television, and you could also hear it, I think, and it made some kind of computer sound, and yeah, I worked with that.
Do you have recorded sound of this installation? Do you have recorded sound of this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have to find. I have to look it up. I think I have something in it from the past. I forgot it. I will. That's good. That's a good suggestion. Thank you, because I think I have to. I recorded some sound from it. Yes, that makes sense to hear. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, later on we did. I got into. Of course, I started also to do more research into these television things, and there was also the wish of how can you record this kind of signals? How can you put them on tape? How can you registrate them in a computer? Or in a computer it was still difficult in '98, but that was very difficult. So if you wanted to make a registration of that kind of signals, you had to do it with, the easiest was with a TV camera, with the video camera. But then a couple of years later, I met a colleague who was also busy with. He came from video art, and he had the same problem with idea of that he could not easily make a registration or recording of this kind of signals. And then we were doing together a residency. We were offered a residency in 2005 to find out a machine, to make a machine to be able to make registrations of this kind of things. It is all about, it's very complicated to tell. Anyway, we came up, in the end we came up with this machine. You can put in like electronic signals, audio signals, and you get like an output which you can plug in your television, or you can plug it in your recording equipment, and you could make visuals on the screen and make videotape from it. Yeah, this was our setup for that we were working like 6 weeks to try to make this machine, which and this were the basic try all kinds of components and manipulations and stuff. It was a very harsh research. We created a domestic situation with my dogs, who was actually sometimes joining, and yeah, we were able to finish this kind of machine, this synchronator machine, and it could beautifully generate all kinds of visuals. Yeah, I wish I could, when I would have internet connection, I could easily show it, but I don't have right now.
I can give you the access.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You have access?
Perhaps the best on my hotspot because.
Okay.
Okay, I can give you it. My line is iPhonic.
iPhonic.
iPhonic. Then I will put the password. I will not spell it
iPhonic.
because we on the beginning of the lecture we have the problem with the local line, but in fact we checked that the lecture is webcasted and recorded since the beginning, so that's correct. Sometimes here is a problem with local line. Do you have it?
Not yet.
Jaka jest nazwa tego? Hotspotu?
iPhonic. Od iPhone, ale iPhonic.
Tak samo nazwa sieci.
Nie, mojej sieci. Znaczy ja mu udostępniam moją komórkową.
Tak, tylko chodzi o to, że on nie może znaleźć, teraz się zastanawiam, która to jest sieć.
No, jak się nazywa?
iPhone Carol. Yeah.
It's like mine. It's mine, so I can just give you mine.
Oh.
To tam,
What was the password? Yeah.
But you have unlimited. You have a lot of. Okay, because it's a pretty heavy.
You use also iPhonic?
iPhone. No, it's like iPhone Carol.
Teraz zacznie jest znane już, prawda? iPhone Carol. Super.
Big off data right now.
Yeah. So this is.
Widzi pan na przykład moją sieć? To ciekawe. Dawid ma korzystanie od transmisji.
Even kijken.
I co?
Trzeba łączyć Wi-Fi, a nie teraz
No jasne, dobra.
Ale możemy później sprawdzić.
Co się dzieje?
Ja teraz mam...
Yeah, we should.
5 osób czeka na to. Po prostu są jakieś już takie...
Video is generated
Są jak
from
teraz
sound or
wczoraj. Paweł Warmonika prowadzą.
Wait a second. Sorry. Yeah.
Wojenna sytuacja.
Maybe also some feedback. But yeah. We also took sometimes the sound. Oh yeah, thank you. That's very. Thank you. You could also take the video signal and take that as an audio signal and feedback it again into the audio and make all kinds of combinations of the. That's what we also did. But what I like also about this one is the fact that we get actually through this that's very important, that we get through this electronic manipulation, that we get some different material from out of these machines. We get a kind of materializing, which I like actually a lot. That you get a different stuff which you never would see otherwise, right? This combination of let me see.
Ja ich wszystkie nie mieszałem cukru, a też nie został żadny bajer. Czyli pieszka wygóra. Jest okej. Ale właśnie nie powiedzieć, że to wszystko muszę jeszcze raz powiedzieć.
I think if you press F, it should like full screen. If you
Nie, jest też jak przyjdziesz do rzecznego, jest to 100%.
of stuff we start to see colors as well. It's not sometimes these are colors which are there, but sometimes we get this thing is going too fast for our eyes. We get our brain is starting to make colors out of it, but not this one.
It's greenish.
Yeah.
Ja nie byłem nawet, jak on zaczął tłumaczyć, co to jest.
Converter z audio na wideo.
Aha.
So this is like this machine we made, Marek, this synchronizer. So you put in like audio or other electronic signals up to 1 volt.
Okay. Then you are visualizing.
And you get like a clear video signal out. Basically, it puts electronic signal into a video signal without disturbing the synchronization signal. So the synchronization signal, guys, that is what's very important. These TVs, they need a kind of, they need to know where they have to put their lines. So they have a so-called synchronization signal. It's basically like a kind of skeleton for the television, that it knows where it has to put, where it has to begin. And you have to put the skeleton signal into the TV, otherwise it does not know what to do. And we made this thing, that the machine, it makes this kind of skeleton signal, but you can put all kinds of other signals in between the bones, so to say. Even kijken. Good.
Masz prawo się wypowiadać.
Takie rozróżnienie fazowe, nie?
Where are we?
Wielokolorowe.
Ja wiesz, ja już jestem przekonany, że 50 po 100. Przepraszam, pierwszy dzień festiwalu. Czekam na mowę po raz pierwszy uczestnik.
Wait a second.
Pokonam sam siebie. Nigdy tak nie wiem.
Now I hear sounds I don't know. Where does this come from?
Maybe Memphis started.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Okay. God.
I
Oh.
znowu się pojawia to samo, że za późno. Ja mówię, sierpień. Tak. Nie, to nie jest za późno.
To jest pierwszy festiwal, kiedy jest wideo Erykolem, czy już był?
No, oczywiście, że było. No, od 2 lat. Wszyscy tak znam napadzić. Ja się pokryję z nim zresztą o to, bo to wiesz, tłumaczy ryskowe zaufanie, składanie ciągłości.
Very shortly. I just discovered this as well. This has of course also a history, this printed circuit board, the things we now use all the time in our phones and whatsoever. I found something about this on Wikipedia, of course. Very interesting. And the development, of course, goes back to in the 30s. Early PCBs. And of course, that's the most terrible thing, of course, it's always related to war. So we see here this kind of stuff from the 1944 radio electronics used in grenades. And it's hard to imagine, but so these were probably the first, like, very small pieces of printed printed circuit boards. Good. Let's go back to. Well, I have so many stuff. I don't know what to. So this was the machine, right? Yeah, we also made other machines to connect to this kind of television gear, this kind of controller for the colors and stuff like that. We made like this homemade production of this stuff.
But can you buy it? Like
You can buy it, yeah, and this is like the bit of this design process where you are starting to find what knob you want and what kind of. So we're doing this kind of thing together. And so the first one you saw, the small square one, it's actually made by a company which we gave the instructions how to make it. And the other one we made ourselves, the other ones.
You can buy this.
So here you can see this the machine which we constructed, this synchronator, and here there is a kind of extra machine how you can eventually manipulate the colors as a kind of well, how do you call it? Prototyping, so to say.
Czy Państwo z tej perspektywy tych paru zajęć, które myśmy odbyli, czy Państwo macie świadomość, jaką przestrzeń wdepnęliśmy w tym momencie? Bo wdepnęliśmy z maksymalnie pozytywnym wymiarem tego słowa. Bo wpadamy w coś szalenie ważnego dla sound. Short comment, because you know we are the lecture is part of Introduction to Electroacoustic Music, which I run with those guys, with excellent students, and now we have a massive attack of audio art on sound art. And, 11 lectures by different artists with different subjects, different topics. So one result is that you are getting a lot of things, but another sometimes perspective is that you are getting lost because there are too many things. So and then I just explained that this is the issue which is extremely important in general, also for electroacoustic music, because that's we are manipulating with the resources, the electronic resources, with the pure resources, and then we are getting very special kind of freedom on that.
Freedom on
not on a regular electroacoustic studio. We are exasperating from this. Yes.
Yeah, this is also. I understand, Marek. This is also a project with that we were making records ourselves. With it's 10 years ago. We had a project to print, press ourselves sculptural electronic sound discs. Well, actually, you can make yourself indeed records. You need a master plate, and you can put that into silicon, and from the silicon one you can put new vinyl into it, and you get actually a print. That's it's quite a process, but it's possible. And the nice thing is that the nice thing with this kind of experimental record production is that you find out that this that the fact that the sound is transmitted to the vinyl, that it becomes something else. There's a kind of sound transformation happening, which I made a kind of piece for the record. It sounded like.
Can you call it in a way cymatics? Because the basic of cymatics is when the vibration of sound is integrate with the matters. Yes, with the physical.
Yes, of course.
So it is.
It is.
It's semantic.
So there is a step of mechanical vibration in between, which I think I made something, a piece with electronic vibrations to put on the record, and it sounded a bit like far away. It sounded a bit like a cello sound, a feedback cello-like sound. And when I heard back the record, it sounded like a kind of didgeridoo. So the fact that this whole process made a different, it gave the sound a different shape, so to say. And therefore, that project we put it into very special, beautifully thing. These are even like instruments. We worked with 4 people, and one of the guys he made an electronic machine on top of the record itself. And where am I going? Yeah, this was also quite particular. The guy, he wanted to make a record which he could put the other way around. So he wanted to. What did he do? Yeah, he wanted to that you would turn your element on your record player. Normally the arm is like this, and it's touching, and the needle is touching. But with this record, you first have to turn your needle, and then you can play the record. It's, and then we made this box out of it. Let me see. Well, I can talk along, of course. Do you guys have any questions on this?
Yeah, I have a question about this device.
Yeah.
How many audio tracks can you map at once, like at the same time? Is it like limitless? Because
Well, it has basically it has 3 inputs. It is red, green, and blue.
yes,
And so if you put one signal into the red, you get red out. One green in, you get green out. When you get blue, when you put blue into the machine, when you put the signal on the blue input, you
Yeah.
get blue out. That's the main thing. But if you put like 3 different signals on the 3 different inputs, it starts to make combinations of colors.
okay.
Yes. It's more like
And-
visual, I think, visual art than sound art, but it's new. But
Yeah, it's an instrument to how it's what can I say? It's a kind of a complex operation to make. It's a path we should find ourselves to how we can relate. What do we want to show with this machine? Because if you just put in sound, you get some stripes. So it's a question of putting like
what material you put into the
what you put into it, and how do you so you have like audiovisual presentation basically with this thing. Although of course it's important to make something which you want to show, but which is of course also relevant to show, of course. And
I'm sorry, it's like on the middle. It's like it's still sound art, but it goes to the visual.
yeah,
It's like you're making from the sound, but you don't care about sound as much. You care. You care as
yeah,
you
of
care
course,
as
yeah,
for the
of
sound.
course, yeah.
It's complex, nice.
It's complex too. Sometimes you also show a bit of the process, how you come from one thing to another one.
Like
That's-
from one medium.
yeah,
to
and
another.
sometimes it's also just the process you show,
Transcribe
which is
it.
yeah.
And so signal is chained to music, and music is chained to
Sorry?
video. Yeah, it's like a chain. This like the audio and the video.
Yeah.
Language is
Yeah, it's basically
translated.
it's directly connected, and we developed it on over the years, of course, and it's sometimes also changing. We are actually we did this last year, this project with my colleague. We played both with. Well, actually, I'm the one who makes the sounds right now, and my colleague Bas, he's making the visuals right now. But we got back to to doing it to showing the stuff on normal televisions. So we have the tool, and we take televisions with us, these video monitors, because we think that's the best solution for to show this project on normal televisions. So that means not on the screen, for instance. Different. It's a different thing. With this television, of course, it's also a kind of chemical process. We are witnessing the fact that the electrons are bombarding the chemicals on the screen, right? When we have this, we are actually looking at a reflection of the wall with light. We push onto it. It's different.
What's the name of this device?
Oh, this one? The
No,
other
no,
one. That's
that-
sorry. It's the synchronator. I will just. It has also one website, of course.
Sorry, we've got.
Yes,
to go.
we have to. I will finish my. We have to. You guys have to go on, right?
But thank you very much.
I'm. Yeah, I cannot stop. I cannot stop talking.
Because this is like very wild tema. So
This is the synchronator. So it has 3 inputs. You can also put it on black and white. There's a knob on it that it goes to black and white straight away. You actually, it's yeah. Okay. Well,
only we have like rehearsal, so everybody stay here.
okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, yeah. Well. Getting back from electronics to sound, other sounds and percussion. I was recently I was playing this kind of setups as well. It's different. I come from percussion, and now I was asked to play with this combination of cello and violin, and a guy double bass, and one person on concertina or mouth harmonica, and they asked me to make layers of sound to play with that, and I used pieces of plants and paper and symbols and also stones. So because sometimes I found out that just stones also have beautiful sounds. Yeah, that was also actually also. I think it was after the show or before the show. It looked like that.
Different objects.
This kind of paper to put in a box, like wrapping paper, pieces of wood, and bamboo. Yeah, that was actually a piece for. I was accompanying the people. One guy was playing double bass, tuba, and cello.
It was free improvisation, yes?
Hmm?
It was free improvisation? Or
No,
something
it
like
was
that?
basically it were pretty. It were quite some pieces which were pretty serious, so to say. It's very not really improvised stuff. Not for me. I mean, I had some instructions, but the other players were playing like pretty much a kind of
Some
score.
notes or something like that.
Yeah. Phew. Yeah, well, you guys have other questions? I will just maybe to conclude, I will see if I can. I have this piece, a recent piece, which is maybe. It's also made with. It's made with a recent composition, which is actually made with electronics and cymbals and well, a couple of these machines as well. But I will see if it works with the. Yes, it works. So let's shortly go through this. Well, thank you for listening. It's always interesting to listen back with other people together, and especially when the listeners are students from this kind of direction, and of course a composer. Yeah. Well, in case you have other questions, so in this last piece, actually, I did a lot of things I told are coming back. There's percussion, there is this electronics. I think the basic note is was played also each time a little bit different. So it's not a sample. It's changing the whole time. Very little differences in tone, pitch. Yeah, in the last period, actually the last year, I sometimes also do stuff with the voice, but this voice actually approaching the sounds of the drums or the cymbals, like this kind of sounds. I was also asked to do for the group with the cello and the violin. The guy said, you have to do something with his or voice. So I start to work with that also a little bit, and I combined it also in this composition. There was also, of course, I put sometimes this sound through a microphone, or even could use the headphone as a microphone. That's also possible. You can, if you take your amplifier at home and you take you are able to take the headphone, plug it into the input of the amplifier. You can also use the headphone as a microphone. Not the best microphone, because there's of course a difference in there's an electronic difference, but yeah.
I have a question. In this last piece, did you play it yourself?
I played it myself, yeah.
Only you?
Yeah.
Only you. Mm-hmm.
So it's built up from a couple of layers, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I played
This repeating layer,
yeah.
It was also manipulated by you during the
Yeah, during the playing, I used one of these machines, and they had this very low sound. It's well, I can talk very long about it, but I can also tell very short. The fact that yeah, it has some kind of beautiful sinus tone, which is actually created in a very old-fashioned way by taking two frequencies, transmitter frequencies, and make a subtraction of it. So subtraction of two. It's basically the old theremin principle. You take like 1 kilohertz, and you take 100 kilohertz. You subtract these frequencies, and the remainder is 1 kilohertz. But I don't. Basically, this is a bit like this kind of. Let me see. It is. I shortly. Where is it? I shortly try to dance. Maybe I can demonstrate that very shortly. I have to be careful not. Oh. Thank you. Let's see if I can show that. With this one maybe. Yeah, you can hear here that it gets to very low frequencies. And it's basically, we have what we see here. We have two. We have a transmitter and a receiver inside the box. Well, it's hard to see, but by changing the frequencies, you get a subtraction of two frequencies. And it's so if you have like the older tone generators, the audio generators, which actually are, I think, also in the cupboard over there in the corridor, they have the principle of making sinus waves by subtraction of two high frequencies, like what I said, 101 kilohertz minus 100 kilohertz is 1 kilohertz, either maybe something like that, or 200 kilohertz. But that's a very effective way to create sinus tones by using electromagnetic waves. Because if we are digitally creating sinus tones, they sound a bit different at some point. They will get better and better, by the way, but it's still a difference to make a. I was talking about sinus to create a beautiful sinus tone. The old way was with the theremin to use, for instance, a 100 kilohertz signal minus 101 kilohertz, and you get 1 kilohertz subtraction. And you get a beautiful generated sinus.
Yes, based on interferences.
Yes?
Yeah.
No, I just
We have two Brielle & Carr original vacuum lamp based generators here.
That ones were really good.
60s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Still working.
yeah. It's still very good.
On the second room.
Yeah.
I can show you in a moment.
No, I came to this subject because we showed a piece. We listened to a piece which was also made with this kind of subtraction frequency. So that was, yeah. Well, if you have any questions, otherwise I continue talking. So no. Well,
you don't use any contact microphones.
I can plug them in. Yeah.
Aha, okay. So
Yeah.
you
I in that piece that you heard, I used some contact mics. Yeah, I will shortly. Let's see if that works.
Illegal, weszliśmy na nielegal.
O nie, nie chcę się klepać.
So you can.
Widać ile nie są drogie, bo to tak uznaliśmy, że tak samo to widać na stronie.
That was your question.
Jak daję te garnety,
This is
to
the
mówię
transmitter.
i pierwszy dzień
This
jest
is
za darmo.
the receiver. And this receiver it has also a very
W zasadzie
small
powinienem dopiero w sobotę rozdawać,
oscillator
jak to przyjdzie,
transmitter
ale to jest bardzo
on board
ryzykowne. To już
in order to
wielokrotnie
convert the
stwierdziłem.
frequencies
Jak
to
się rozmawiam z
a
tymi,
different
którzy pędzą,
level
ja
in
mówię,
order
a
to
zaczekajcie,
convert
jeszcze mam garnety.
it so that it can be detected
No,
and
pędzą,
be
bo
translated
mamy te...
into audio.
Tam
And
jest
where's
kwestia,
the
jak
CPU?
niedzielę, to...
Where's the CPU of the system?
Ja mówię, ale co, do 12
CPU
nocy?
there.
Nie, no to tam
Kind
zobaczcie, jak one się, te koncepcje zaczynają, to tam jest kilka ich, także
There's no
na
computer.
ten ostatni
It's just,
można zdążyć jeszcze.
It's just
A
a
poza tym są
detection
instalacje.
system. There's no
Because
computer.
I know that the motor installation are based on Arduino.
Yeah, that's also
Zaczyna się 18,
you
nie?
have
Koncept
actually
dolnej galerii
with the
Martina
Arduino
Basta.
you can.
But you don't have Arduino.
No, this is
Potem jest
old school,
bardzo
good
zdiagnozowana
stuff.
instalacja
With Arduino you
też na
can
dole
also
przygotowana.
produce.
Yeah, because you
can
have-
put it
you have
plug in
the-
receiver, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you have the CPUs, I was wondering if you
Małe
also have the
maszyny
CPUs.
I don't use it right now. Sometimes I was trying to use digital domain electronics for radio, but I was not so satisfied. It's about
Potem jest jego koncept, na koniec jest
it has of course possibilities, but
Double Infinity, to jest
I
88
feel
15-minutowe
I have more space with the analog way of creating the signal.
And will the sound change if you scratch with the microphone with other
This is all very old school microphone. This is actually from a headphone from old airplanes. So so you
On
can.
paper?
Do 10 kończymy.
Scratch some paper.
Spokojnie. Zaczynamy o 18.
Yes.
Martyna Basta,
Yeah, it changed.
Giacomo, ten.
Czyli on będzie gdzieś po 20. Pewnie więcej. Po 20 będzie.
Can you hear your
Tak,
heart?
tak.
Heartbeat?
Więcej w
No,
środku.
tak, ja to dlatego robię zawsze w bloku, nie oznaczam.
Not with this one, I think.
No,
So that's yeah.
tak?
That's what it is.
Dobra. To wiem, tylko po drugiej stronie, to wiem.
So
Yeah,
you just
to pracuję
use
w
this
40.
one
Dokładnie,
microphone
od 40.
or more
Dokładnie, od
microphones?
47.
Yeah, I have more. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Tak,
okay.
tak, tak.
No,
Also
it's
use
not.
these ones.
Okay.
No nie, bo to
Use,
jest cały czas to migotanie właśnie z portywli, bo nie wszyscy wiedzą, które działy się tam przeniosły, a które nie. No po prostu to tak cały czas się troszkę tego
Yeah, it's
uczymy.
not
Ja na przykład
necessary.
wiedząc, że
I
pani
was
Halineciach już jest tam, no to
This
to
one.
wiem skąd te
It
problemy
works
też się
very
biorą.
well.
Nie tylko z tego, że tam nie wszystko jest na czas, prawda, i tak dalej, bo te karty
This comes from old video camera.
no,
And
powodują
sometimes,
te perturbacje, ale też właśnie wynika to z tej logistyki, prawda, z tego,
Find them.
że jesteśmy
I
rozbicieni
bought
na
them
tym, że
second hand, very cheap. And,
ja zwykle jak coś potrzebuję, to jadę tam po prostu, bo to jest najlepiej, czyli
I
działam
changed it
pomocy
and
i tam się
can-
kontaktuję bezpośrednio.
actually, indeed, you can plug it in.
Dobra, to ja schodzę. 18 dzisiaj.
The nice thing with
Tylko jedna i jest też sposób transmisji.
The nice thing with this radio electronics is that you also can tune on the side of the
Ale
signal.
oczywiście miło, jeżeli
Well, just to show that you get combinations of noise and so the signal is in the air like that. But when you tune it differently, you get this kind of mixtures of noise or underlaying radio noise and the signal. That's also where it starts to get interesting when you get this specific blends of noise and signal.
And I have like maybe I have a question. Maybe it's not connected with our topic, but like, how is it traveling with all this stuff? It's like
This
when you go through the I don't know, through the airport.
no, it's mostly it's not,
you
not
know
a
the
problem,
Guardians
no.
afraid that you have a bomb or something like
No, that was just checked right now, but mostly it's not a problem. No, I remember people with guitar, they had most problem with,
Oh.
with the guitar in the case. They had like serious stuff. I
Okay.
don't know why, but no, this is pretty fine. You just say, okay. Sometimes, of course, they recognize now, I think, the mixing boards, because sometimes maybe DJs are
Yeah.
traveling with the mixing board. So that's not.
that.
No, the thing was, he was complaining about some piece. He saw the guy of the control. He saw something round. I said, "What's the round?" And he found the CD in the bar. I said, okay.
But they can think that this is the part of a bomb, for example.
Phew.
This-
Yeah. Well, it's yeah. Bomb. What it is, yeah.
Sound bomb.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tonight,
Tonight, yeah, we yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Oh, that's Mark's probably.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Idziecie? Idziecie? Poczekajcie, ja chcę do łazienki.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye. Do, 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 do.